Hello, everyone, and welcome to the COO Summit meeting. My name is Jan, and I'll be moderating today's call. Our speaker today is Paula Burns, Vice President of Operations at Ball Aerospace, presenting Orchestrating the White Space. We'll turn to the presentation in just a moment, but first I want to go over the web conference instructions. Everyone is currently in mute so that the background noise does not become distracting for the other participants. To view today's presentation as the screens change live, you may go to the link that was sent to you in your reminder email. Once in there, you can click anywhere on a page, and there will be a pop-up with the option to make a comment. Feel free to ask questions by posting them as a comment, and we'll be sure all of them are answered. For the newer participants in the group, it might be useful to review some of the main benefits you can take advantage of as a member at no additional charge. First are the live monthly web conference meetings, which you've already dialed into today. I hope you find these useful, and we have an excellent lineup, which you can see by going to our website schedule page. Second, we do record all of these, so if you're traveling or stuck in another meeting, simply log in at your leisure, and the full archives of past meetings are available to you with a number of interesting topics. Third, get to know the other members. By logging in, you can see all their profiles, and we're glad to make any introductions if wished. Fourth, if you're wrestling with any key issues or decisions, we strongly encourage you to reach out to the other members. Also, our site makes it very easy to post questions. The seniority and experience of your fellow members make this the best possible forum to get advice from others who've probably dealt with the same issues and can give you sound advice on what worked and what did not. Fifth, we really encourage site visits. If you've not visited others' offices to have a great discussion on best practices and see their facilities, please do so. You can log in to see the other members' companies and cities, so feel free to reach out, or as mentioned, we are happy to make introductions. 6, we also generate executive summaries of meetings, including the key takeaways and learning nuggets, so that you can reference them and put them right into action. 7th, our members are very busy, so we started a service where we pick out the top 6 most interesting articles among thousands at hundreds of sites to keep you abreast and ensure you don't miss the key ones. Lastly is our Book of the Month summary that you can either read or listen to as you commute. Each month we'll be selecting the most interesting book, then summarizing the ideas so within minutes you can absorb the key takeaways. There are many other benefits, of course, but I wanted to highlight some and ask you to keep a lookout in your inbox for a number of these each month. That takes care of the housekeeping items. If you'll just give me a moment to now pull up the speaker's presentation and introduce her. Okay, all set. Now before I turn the call over, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our speaker today. Paula Burns is Vice President of Operations at Ball Aerospace. She joined the company in 2004 and helped establish the Program Management Office, focusing on driving consistency and excellence into program management. She has served Ball as Manager of the Independent Research and Development Portfolio for Tactical Products, the Director of Production Programs for Tactical Solutions, Deputy General Manager of the Tactical Solutions Business Unit. For the past 2 years, Paula ran the ITS organization, focusing on stabilizing services during unprecedented growth. She was recently promoted to VP of Operations. You may read Paula's complete bio in the reminder email sent to you. Paula, thank you so much for being with us today. Just say next when you wish the slides to advance, and the floor is all yours.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. So I actually presented at this forum, it's probably a year, I lose track of time, ago, and I felt like a total poser because I was the CIO and not the COO, and I guess be careful what you talk about because pretty shortly thereafter I became the COO, so it's been a very interesting journey. So some of you may have seen some of this before, and I will tell you, operations under unprecedented growth, I think the issues and what arises are fairly consistent over time. So let's move to the next slide, and I'll walk through it. And for those of you who heard this before, my apologies. Talk a little bit more about my first 2 months as Vice President of Operations, which is essentially we don't use C's at Ball, so it's the COO role. So Ball Corporation writ large is 2 very distinct businesses under one corporation. If you can see that ball jar there, we go all the way back to 160 plus years ago of making those ball jars. And that portion of the business has grown into a global $11 billion metal packaging and beverage packaging company. The aerospace portion of the portfolio started about 65 years ago. A few of the very innovative Ball brothers met some very innovative engineers at University of Colorado, and they started the Aerospace Corp. As a matter of fact, my office that I just moved into with the 1970s paneling and all is the original CEO office for Ball Aerospace, built in the 1960s. So, and it looks it, and I love it because I'm kind of a history geek. So, the things that permeate across all of Ball are integrity, transparency with our customers, and staying close with our customers. So our core values really do align, and so despite the big difference in the businesses, we have a lot that we really align around that makes us Ball, and it is our culture and how we treat our people and the level of integrity and working with our customers. So that's very consistent across all of Ball. Next slide. Okay, so who we are matters. We are growing across all of our businesses right now. And keeping our culture has been something we've talked about a lot, struggled to come up with, exactly how you do that. But we have a significant amount of time and effort that goes into employee engagement surveys, and real action plans to follow up on that. One of the biggest things we focused on the last few years that's making a difference in the quality of our decision making, I believe, is our diversity and inclusion efforts in both our hiring and promotion and career development. So we won a big award from Forbes on that, which was phenomenal, and that was won by the entire corporation, so both the aerospace and the packaging side. Managing growth, we talk about scalability all the time. And it really quickly has to get down to a plan of action and who's doing what to actually ensure we can meet the business that's coming. A big portion of that was falling into various aspects that have become the operations division, and because they were all fractured and all around the company, we felt like we weren't really integrating our scaling plans well enough, which is part of the reason they actually created this Vice President of Operations role. So not only is it a new role to me, it's actually a new role for Ball Aerospace. Many of the divisions that I have were embedded in engineering and other places in the company. So they pulled that together as part of really meeting that scalability piece. Tools, mentoring, and training, all things as you're bringing on, 900 people a year. So we were 2,800 people 3 years ago. We brought on 900 in the last couple of years. So that's tremendous growth. We are finding considerable opportunities to improve our tool sets. Many of the people we're hiring are coming from companies or coming out of universities, really, where they were used to having the cutting-edge tools at their fingertips, and it's become a real imperative for us to get the IT, which I've owned for the last couple of years, up to snuff, so we've been working a lot on that. Mentoring, there are certain organizations that have formal and some have informal, so it's not global right now, although I will say there's probably not a senior manager that I know that's not, or any of our managers that aren't mentoring at least 3 to 4 professionals in various points in their career, either young professionals, mid-career. So we take that seriously as well. The complete demographics of our company are changing. It used to be when you got to Ball, you were new until you had 8 years, new. Because people don't leave, and that's a testament to the culture and the cool work that we get to do. But when you're adding that many new people, we flipped from, our junior to senior ratio has flipped tremendously, which has had a predictable but interesting element to it, and that is many of our senior people, we're asking that they become consultants and mentors and work at a higher level. Some of them are really good at it, and some of them really like to do the direct work. They want to work on an instrument. They want to work on a spacecraft. They want to work on the F-35 or any number of our other programs. And so figuring out your senior people who can actually take that role, your senior technical people, your senior supply chain people that can take that role has been interesting. And it's not always who you think is going to be good at it. It is. So we've watched that carefully and continue to drive that. Integrity above all else, I talked a little bit about that already. It was what attracted me to Ball. Initially, I have 20-year military experience. I'm a retired military officer. And I did consulting for a few years and worked in and out of many, many companies. And it really came down to me that the integrity of the company was a huge deal. Almost to the point of, I don't really care what we're building or making, but we've got to do it the right way. And so Ball's been a great fit for me. I've been here 15 years. And we're super committed to that, all the way up, to the CEO of the Packaging Corp, which is multinational, and our commitment to integrity, building facilities and plants and providing jobs in countries from Africa to Asia to Europe. We stick with it. We have the same levels of integrity and principles, and if it means we can't operate in those countries, then we don't operate in those countries. And let's see, so Ball Corp has been a big supporter both from a financial perspective and our capital investments. We've quadrupled manufacturing space, clean rooms over the last 3 years, and we've gotten tremendous support from Ball Corporation investing in aerospace to meet the demands of the growth. It costs a lot of money to grow. The corporation's been fantastic about that. We're an EVA-driven company, so you got to jump that hurdle. However, we have, like I said, we've got multiple new large infrastructure and chambers and test chambers all being built now here in the Broomfield and Boulder area. So great support from corporate. Next slide. So, what's going on? I've touched on some of this. So Ball Corp, yes, 11 billion, 17,000 employees all over the world. Ball Aero at 1.2 billion and continuing to grow. 4,000 employees. I still look at that and my head explodes because I was here for many years, probably 12, where we were 25 to 28, and just kind of cycling up and down between those numbers. 13 locations. I'll show you a chart of that in a little bit. Community and culture. I think one of the coolest things Ball does is every employee, regardless of where you fall in the organization, Ball will match your charitable contributions up to $5,000. That means each and every one of us, if we give $5,000, we give $10,000, and that's just incredible. Community investment dollars to make available to the charities of your choice. So that's a really neat thing about Ball. And then obviously we got a lot of pull from our communities and the universities. We got School of Mines, we got CU, Regis, many local universities that we work with to go out into the middle and elementary schools on STEM and other things. So it's a great place to work. I don't plan on leaving. Hopefully I'll be successful in this new role and they won't send me packing. So keep my fingers crossed. Next slide. So markets, space hardware, spacecraft, instruments, sensors, all of that, our main competitors, some of you may work we compete with the biggest primes in aerospace and defense for many of those missions. So we're a little bit of an anomaly given our size. Many of those other companies are, 30, 40, 70,000 strong. So Ball's an interesting, smaller aerospace and defense company that, with the support of our corporate brethren, competes at that level. So it's pretty neat. The tactical division is really where I spent 10 years of my time. Being a military retiree, I'm very familiar with a lot of these products and a lot of the customers, and so really grew up in that arena. That division is growing considerably as well. We just added another 200,000 square feet of manufacturing space. It's so phenomenal to walk and see the hardware getting built. I love that we build hardware. I love that it's tangible. And then the information domain and really turning data into actionable intelligence. We've got a significant presence in Dayton, Ohio, Albuquerque, and other places around the states in providing that data exploitation. So it's really interesting. I mean, if you look at it, we're starting to do a lot more programs that cross all of these domains, meaning we could have some space-based hardware collecting data that could then go and be processed into intelligence and then passed to tactical assets. And honestly, for the first time about 2 years ago, we talked about it for a long time. We really have started to connect and provide that end-to-end solution space to our customer set. So it's super exciting. It probably sounds like a ball pitch. It's actually not meant to be. I guess I should be grateful to be here. Next slide. So some of the locations, you can see a lot of it is in the Colorado. We have our D.C. presence like any aerospace and defense company. We have our strategic operations and government engagement office there. And then some other smaller locations around Ohio, Colorado Springs, Chantilly, and those more are associated more with either customer relationships, specific customer relationships. We're starting to do more hardware builds in those diverse areas, but a lot of the data. That's okay. You can go to the next one. I'm ready. Okay, so let me preface this with I sort of grew up in operations positions, and I still struggle to say that I'm somehow a trained operational professional, but I have gravitated to these types of positions throughout my career. I have always, since my military days, been focused on my troops, my boots on the ground people. So now the equivalent to that is my people out there building hardware, running test chambers that have to service multiple programs. And how do I make their job easier? How do I remove roadblocks? How do we get the efficiency out of this? Because everybody's working really hard, and how do we make them work smarter and not harder and enable their success? So I think that's a sort of a fundamental premise that drew me to some of these positions. So, operations, U.S. Navy flight operations, it was a very different game, but it really is where I cut my teeth. It was tactical. Our missions were incredibly clear, clearly articulated, and with very succinct success criteria. And we trained, and we trained, and we trained, and we executed, and we came back, and we talked about how we executed, how we could be better. And that was just the culture, and that debrief, that no blame, check your ego at the door debrief is one of the most valuable things that I learned to do in my entire career. And I honestly wish corporate America was better at it. We really don't seem to be able to check the blame game at the door. And like I said, I consulted in a lot of companies. And I think it's interesting. I think it's it's fear-driven behavior. Whereas in the military, it was such an expectation because the fear was, if I am not transparent, if I am not willing to say what I did well, what I did not do well, and point that out in others and have that sort of openness among the team, someone else is going to go out and kill themselves doing the same thing, right? There but for the grace of God go I. And so there was just this imperative to learn. And it was on a much smaller scale, and it was easy to do, and it was contained. So, but that's really where I cut my teeth. I moved into the director of production role in our tactical business, many years later, and it really was the first portfolio of programs that had to grow up in the manufacturing and operations domain. And so Ball's programs that we had been involved in the early development were starting to move into what we call large-scale production, which for some of you and for the packaging side they laugh at. But, you're talking 500, 1,000. That's when I took it over, when it was going from, hey, we built 3, we defied physics, it works, now go build a bunch. And we really didn't have the skills, the tools, the IT tools and the processes in place, and it was actually a lot of fun because I had a phenomenal team of manufacturing engineers that just wanted to be cut loose. And so again, it was like, wow, I'm really glad they're here. They know what they're doing, and I'm just going to remove roadblocks and get them the resources they need to go turn us into a world-class manufacturing organization. And I think, the one thing that I did right was set the tone from the beginning, and that was quality absolutely comes first, period, dot, end of story. I promise you, cost and schedule will follow. And I believe that to this day. And that's sort of, Bible law for that portfolio still. That's still the law. And you can ask anyone on the floor about how to order those three things, and they'll get it right. So, but our manufacturing engineers were critical. It was really what it was a high mix, low volume. So even going to the corporate side and saying, hey, show me what you do. You cranked out 5,000 cans in a minute. There were things to be learned there, but it was very different. Our manufacturing technicians that are actually turning the engineer into hardware are highly, highly skilled. We hire a lot of them. We hire a lot of them out of the military because, frankly, we need the clearances as well. We hire a lot of auto mechanics. We need people that are really good with their hands because these are complex to build. And even now that we're in volume, we've done a significant amount to sort of, poke-yoke it and error-proof it and human error management and all those more mature things. But at the end of the day, our technicians are brilliant and skilled. And really understand the implications of the build process on the quality of the product, and work closely with our engineers on that. So, the significant thing about that is I own the leadership, I own the assets, I own the results. Again, I had a pretty clear vision, and my engineers help us set up measures of success and then really get into measures of quality, measures of tack time and how long processes take. Why are all the errors happening here? Oh, we may have not trained someone well enough, and really becoming data-driven about manufacturing. So loved it. It was a great opportunity, and that portfolio was 3 times the size it was when I ran it. Next slide. So I say now it's getting tactical, and now it's getting complicated. So from the production portfolio, I took over as director of operations for that tactical hardware business. It was the first, senior management title at the company that even included operations. And really what happened there was that portfolio started to grow, I guess it's about 6 years ago now, and it was the first portfolio to get into double-digit growth. And we didn't have anyone that ran operations, and it became very clear that, hey, everywhere where things are breaking are being driven by growth. Where everything was person dependent, where there wasn't a process or there wasn't data or those certain things, and so I stepped into that role. Really, I owned finances in terms of partnering with the vice president and signing up to what we were going to deliver financially to the company. Operations, how we were going to get product through, scaling it, and then, anything that was broken. It was sort of, people just didn't know where to go when things broke that were highly cross-functional, meaning they may have owned a piece of it, but a bunch of other groups owned pieces of it, and we just didn't have mechanisms, or who do I go to, or who's the belly button, and who owns that? And so I really was, me and my team there became really the first operation, I'm going to say center, but it really was a few people in the company that was dealing with that unprecedented growth. And it was interesting because coming out of the production portfolio where we had matured a lot of that, I now have the development portfolio where, my service level agreement on what they wanted things to turn fast. They wanted to do prototypes in a day. And, how can I get into the machine shop and get my thing in a couple of hours? Whereas the machine shop was also servicing a production program where they needed to do 300 housings over the next 2 months. I mean, it was just, people were being asked to be so ambidextrous. And my contention, and I don't know that people would agree with me, is development folks, regardless of the processes, regardless of how you utilize your assets, production people and development people are two different breeds of cats. So you had not only different service level agreements and expectations and different things that were important. So if you're familiar with doing a house of quality event, if you did a house of quality event with production and then you did it with development, the top 5 things would be completely different. And how do you serve diverse customers like that? That was that was 5 years sort of that. The end game and the vision that we saw coming was at some point this portfolio is going to be big enough where I can have an autoclave for production and I can have a couple for production. I can start to split the assets and the service centers and we call the monuments, the things that every product has to pass through, whether it's a prototype or a production unit. Because everything's different. The scheduling is different. The material ordering, the quality requirements, completely different. We're not going to deliver prototypes. So we did have a vision that says there's going to be a tipping point where we can start to split this. But in between now and then, which was when I owned it, it was challenging. It was fun, and people had to be able to wear a couple of hats, and some could do it and some couldn't. So I did that for a bunch of years, and then the rest of the company, the other portfolios, the space portfolio and the digital portfolio, started to grow with those double-digit numbers as well, and so we started to experience those same types of issues in our other plants, our plant in Boulder, our instrument plant, our space craft plant. So I actually got sent over to IT for a couple of years. I thought they were talking to someone else when the CEO was like, yeah, can you go do that? And I looked over my shoulder for someone else that he may be talking to. I don't really consider myself an IT person. I did some IT consulting. That was a lot of what my consulting was, and it was 15 years before. I was by no means technically current, but it was one of the areas that I think, at the executive level, they were astute enough to say that with the hiring of 900 people, the IT is going to crumble first. And we need someone over there that can at least help. Now, in retrospect, I wish they had sent me over there 18 months earlier or 2 years earlier. It's because then you're very tactical, right? You're whacking moles day in and day out. And it's painful to watch your team. As I brought in new leadership, they clearly had the technical skills and the vision to move the organization forward. And then for the next year, I said, yeah, we're not moving forward. We're putting out fires. And we were just so tactical, and that's actually tough to do, right? With your strategic leadership team to have to be so tactical. But we slowly sort of crept out of that and really started to be able to execute on a strategic vision for IT. So I was at for a couple of years. And then, again, the growth across the company, the executive staff and the CEO decided, we're going to create a VP of operations position. So I kept IT. I took manufacturing and test operations and supply chain, which were both embedded in engineering. But, we're an engineering company, and when you looked at the span of control and the number of bodies that were owned by engineering, and engineering being the core competency, how can they focus on supply chain development and the running of the factory floor? And the answer was, they did a stand-up job, but it was time to have a VP level person focus solely on that and let engineering focus on engineering and new technology and bringing in talent and those sorts of things. The other group that I picked up that I worked with a bunch when I was in ITS was the data analytics, and I'm really thrilled about that. That was actually in our mission assurance organization, and for those of you in aero and defense, you might be scratching your head on that, but it really was a grassroots effort by a couple of people in our mission assurance and quality area that got really good at looking at quality data and figuring out systemic problems, and then really took it to the next level on doing data analytics on a project-by-project basis for customers all over the company. And then when we created operations, it really was a natural fit to say, I need to be a data-driven organization that drives efficiency, and effectiveness, and quality into our operations. And so actually that team just moved over officially about a week ago, and I'm really, really excited because I have an industrial operations organization that got built under the manufacturing and test that has industrial engineers and industrial operations people who really get this. And I feel like, when we lash them up with the data, we're going to be able to drive that vision of operational excellence, which, by the way, I'm still figuring out what that vision is. I've been in the position, I guess, 8 weeks now, but the first 4 were spent turning over IT, so I don't know if that counts. So, yeah, new position for me, multiple years of double-digit growth. I took the first 90 days, and if you haven't seen that book, I have the first 90 days book. I've had it for years, and I flip back through it and look at it, and I really did a listening and learning tour for a lot of reasons. Number one, I needed to hear I had a broader customer set. I went from 200 people to 1,000 people. So, my team grew. I picked up supply chain and manufacturing and test operations. I was pretty familiar with manufacturing and test from the portion of it that supported tactical, but I didn't know the space side. Supply chain, probably my weakest area, and so I needed to go down through that organization and talk to my team on where are they and what are they struggling with, and what do they see as a vision for this organization? Where do they see the whole is greater than the sum of the parts? Where do they see this data analytics, IT, MTO, and supply chain actually being able to help each other grow and become better? And then I needed to get out and talk to all of my customers, which are internal, so all of the different P&L centers on, what's your vision for this? What is really just starting with, hey, in IT, manufacturing, supply chain, what's not working? What is working? And, oh, by the way, when you heard operations was created, what did you attribute to that? What did you think that was going to go solve? And I heard some wild things that I really don't own. But people, you create a new org, you've never had it before, and I found the attribution of everything that's broken, you're going to help us with. Everything that hurts is yours, isn't it? And but those things are owned by someone, and so I'm keeping what I think I own, and I'm handing off what I think I don't. But it was really a great learning opportunity. My fun little graph. And by the way, one person I am hiring is someone who knows how to do PowerPoint, because as you can see, I'm terrible at it. I'm like the worst. I don't do cool charts. So I already have a job requisition open for my communications and cool chart person. But this curve that I put on here, if you look at the book, the first 90 days, I am a results-oriented, I have to have traction, not every day, but, at the end of the week, I like to feel like, we've helped accomplish something. And that first 90 days, while I'm on that listening and learning tour, all I'm doing is sucking up people's time, right? I'm sucking up my team's time. And don't get me wrong, some of them were so thrilled to have their new VP show up in their office, and that's wonderful. But at the end of the day, I'd be like, oh my gosh, what have I got done today? So I was very uncomfortable, but there's this curve where it says, your value for your first 90 days or more is negative. You need to be okay with that, and you need to go do these things, to learn your organization, to learn your people, and structure, and then you're going to hit a break-even. Don't worry, you're going to hit a break-even point, and then you're going to move off into the value-added curve. And so, I looked at that every day, and I meditated on how to be comfortable in a non-value-added role for 3 months straight, right? It's just, so that was sort of a learning thing for me. I will tell you, though, all of the complex, intractable problems lie in the white space. It's the same. And maybe I oversimplify. I'd love to come out and benchmark and talk to some of you COOs that are out there, because I'm establishing a new org and it's a new role for me. I think that would be fantastic. But I got to tell you, in a growth mode, and the growth modes that I've seen, all of the intractable problems are not owned, meaning there's multiple teams, or we've expected these miraculous handoffs of complex either processes, hardware, data, and everybody's super busy. And so at Ball, where that used to be a conversation, and the one person who did it their whole life was always there. Like we don't have that luxury anymore, and that's where the breakdowns are happening. My conjecture is that a company like Ball, the processes and the tools underneath that white space absolutely need to mature, but we will never move away from somebody out of one of those groups that have players in that domain owning that phase. I don't think we're ever going to get out of that. We build complex things, and owners of those phases. Is that someone's dog barking? Can anyone else hear that? I feel like I can hear a dog barking in the background or something. Anyway, I still think we're going to have leadership. And with a lot of new people, we're going to have to grow leadership to own those white space domains, particularly on the super complex ones. I think the lower complexity ones we can fix, and we can fix with process, and we can fix with a RACI chart and roles and responsibilities, but there are going to be some where we're going to have real leadership. What do I see in my first 2 months? There's opportunities within each of my orgs to up its game, but I have to ensure the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And we're in the middle of strategic planning and actually just having my direct reports of these various orgs get to know each other and what these groups do. And I'm already seeing tremendous opportunities for IT to help manufacturing supply chain and have it be data-driven, right? So I see those things already. I need to integrate my leadership team. We're already coming together, like I said, over strategic planning and capital planning and projects and budget. And I have some great leadership in those areas, and I'm confident that they're going to come to me with the right list of, hey, here are our top priorities within each of our org, and then here are our top things we got to go tackle to make ops better in the next 12 months, in the next 18 months, and that's really kind of what I'm working towards. And frankly, I have a lot of data, subjective data, commentary from my listening and learning tour. But there's things that I heard over and over that will be validated against the data, and we'll go tackle. I do have this vision of this industrial operations skill set joining with the data analytics skill set. I mean, they've got such a great structured way to tackle problems, and I really do see that as the efficiency and effectiveness engine of operations and helping really prioritize, because there's a million things that people can go work on, but we have day jobs. We got to keep hardware moving, and so how much can you really carve out to do continuous improvement, and then really how much change can the system take? I could go launch 10 improvement projects, and if they're all showing up at mechanical engineering saying, hey, your people need to do this different now, mechanical engineering is going to blow a gasket, right? So there's that whole organizational change management aspect of it, right? You got to move quick, you got to get wins, and you can't overwhelm the system, and it's pretty overwhelmed right now. Getting the right leadership, there are clearly areas where more robust leadership is needed, and it's going to be critical. I did a lot of that in IT. It's really hard, particularly at a company like Ball, where some people have been here for a long time, all that kind of stuff, right? Or it's a new position based on the growth, and I got to do an external hire. And external hires are great, but it's still very difficult, I think, to hire externally for leadership. And you get it right sometimes, you get it wrong sometimes. And you get it wrong, it's another 6 to 8 month cycle, right, or more. So I think it's really important to get that right. And then, I've got to create an organizational identity. We've got to align around what's the vision of operations, And I think there are many who think I'm moving too slow on defining what that is. I believe in the process. I believe in including people who have been working in this organization for a long time, and so, we'll get there eventually. So I think that's kind of it. Is that the end for maybe I have one more sort of summary. So next slide. I probably talked about a lot. Yep, I need my vision and mission. I got overwhelmed teams. We got a lot of stress in the system. We got to set priorities. What does success look like? We have a lot of service that we provide to programs, which is where we make our money, where we don't have service level agreements. And frankly, when your paint shop or your machine shop or your Vibe lab starts to get really busy, you got to get SLAs in place, because there's going to be a alignment around what programs think they can get, what we think we can provide, and how much money the company's willing to invest to make the time shorter. Another machine, another this, another that. And so that's kind of underway right now. Really coalescing around, having an ops identity and winning the hearts and minds of the 1,000 people that I now have. Continuous improvement. Ball is a huge relationship company, so as busy as I am, now that the listening and learning tour is over, which ate up untoward amounts of time, I've got to be visible, and I've got 200 people in 3 locations. I feel pretty lucky that they're all within at least 25 minutes of each other, but I need to be visible in all of those locations. Leadership, the no orphans rule. If it's not owned, if it's in the white space and it's not owned, it's not going to get fixed. So even if you don't own the whole thing, someone's got to own it. Someone's got to step up and own it. And then really acting like an owner comes all the way down from corporate, and that's a ballism. Act like you own the company, behave that way, and really embrace the culture that we've set up here with our integrity and how we treat people. So those are key things. I will say my first operations, all hands, email went out. Safety of people, safety of hardware, the ball culture. We got to keep supporting each other, collaborating with each other, and trusting each other. Operational excellence, and being close to our internal customers. Where are they going and what do they need? And so those tenets remain the same, really, for me. So I think that's all of it.
Thank you.
If you want to open for questions, I can go on mute, and you can tee that up if you would.
Okay. Do you have another slide you want up?
Is that the last one, or no?
This is 9, and I showed that there are 10. Let's see what we got.
Okay,
there you go.
Oh, hey, there you go. Questions.
Okay. Thank you, Paula. We really enjoyed your presentation. And before I go out and check the chat line of questions submitted, do we have any live questions? Again, it is *6 to unmute your line and go ahead with your question. Or you can click on this last slide, post your question as a comment, and we'll take it from there. So again, are there any live questions? Okay, Paula, we've received several questions throughout your presentation. Keep in mind that you may have touched on these topics, but I'm going to ask all the questions anyway, just in case there's something you'd like to add to or elaborate on.
Okay, that's great.
Okay, the first member asks, how do you identify senior people who would make good mentors?
Honestly, whether they've been doing, here's what I found. Your track record is indicative of how you're going to do. So if they're senior folks who've been doing it, they tend to be a shoo-in, right? They're going to be good at it. And honestly, with some of the others, we put them into those roles and kind of monitored how it worked. And some of them came back and just said, this is not my thing. Like, I want to stay direct. I want to work a program. So there was some level of self-selection. But we were very intentional in both talking to the mentee and the mentor to say, listen, this might not work from the get-go. It might be a great mentor-mentee relationship for a few months, and then you've sort of exhausted what you're going to get out of that, and it might be time to get a mentee in a different area or a different do a different pairing. And so we just really monitored that pretty closely and said, hey, this needs to be one of those, debrief-like environments. This is a no harm, no foul. We call it ball polite. Don't be ball polite. If you guys aren't, if you're not getting anything out of this, let's flip it. And so those are a couple of the things that we did.
Okay, thank you for that. Our second member asks, with the influx of new staff working with tenured staff, how have you blended them into one existing long-standing culture?
So that's a work in progress, and we do a lot of communications on ball values. We do significant training on, what are the fundamental premises. So we have an overarching Drive for 10 strategy that comes down from corporate, and it really goes into the specifics about how we treat each other, integrity, how we treat our customers. And so those core tenets are present everywhere. We are all indoctrinated into that. It is challenging, though. I will tell you, we had to work really hard on our intake process. I would still say we struggle with some of the core trainings that people need, whether it be on a tool or whatever. We worked with HR and the groups that were hiring a lot of folks, and we have integration managers that have a whole checklist where they continue to check in with that new person over the first 4 months, and then another checklist comes in, and so we manage the intake process over a year now. And that's been worked on by, that was a project we gave to some of our young professionals to come up with. We engaged people who had been here a year on what worked well, and so we put our money where our mouth was, and we pulled projects together. And it's not perfect. It's hard.
Okay. Thank you for that. The next person asks, you said newer and younger staff coming from other companies were accustomed to more technology and might possibly have been more tech savvy. How do you match the needs of these newer employees while trying to get the older or more tenured staff up to this level?
If you had asked me 5 years ago, how hard it would be to change out our entire design to manufacturing system, I would have run, I would have cringed. Don't get me wrong, projects like that are incredibly hard, but it's interesting what's happening now. The growth in the business has even shown our long-term employees that we can't stay on the tool set we're on. So we've had people come in saying, why don't you have this, or your tools don't do that. And then we've had this growth influx. And then I also believe when I went over and took over IT, we had people running IT that were we had gone through 5 leaders in 6 years, and so IT had been very disconnected from the business. And so, I instituted a liaison program to get people out into the business, what's working, what's not working. I believe the tech savvy of both our executive staff has increased tremendously. And I'll tell you what will get their attention faster than anything. IT is expensive. It is a lot of money. And I think when they sent me over there, the one credibility I had was I'm going to figure out where we need to spend money, and it's going to be appropriate. We're going to really need to do it. And so I just believe the tech acumen and the our tools fray from growth too, right? They just can't support. They can't. They can't. It's just really hard, right? And as you get into new missions and larger missions, which is driving the growth of the company, and they see it. The tools aren't going to take us there. And so I think it's a culmination of all of those things.
Okay, thank you very much.
But without all of that, it's hard to get nobody, oh my God, change people's tools, and they, it's like stealing their children.
Okay, thank you for that. The fourth person said, I believe you said you have 200 people in ops. How are they organized?
I have 200 people in IT. I have 1,000 in ops. So 200 in IT, 230 and growing in supply chain, and the remainder in manufacturing and test operations. I'm not sure that that's detailed enough, but that's basically the structure.
Okay.
I have 4 direct reports right now: analytics, MTO, supply chain, IT. They have a direct report staff with anywhere from, I would say, 3 to 9 directors or senior managers under them.
Okay, thank you.
The one thing I will say about the org structure is, as you grow, like my budget ask this year, I need to free up more of my managers to do managing. You have the manager who does work and then manages, right? Who works direct on a program or does these other things or has a day job. I need more managers whose day job it is to manage and lead. But I'm not alone. I mean, that's writ large with this kind of growth.
Okay, thank you. And the last question that came in is, how are you capturing the intellectual capital from the tenured, about to retire staff before they exit?
Yeah, that's a good question. Fortunately, I don't own that in operations right now, but there is an effort in our quality organization really to do just that. We've paired them up. I know in IT we have a really robust succession planning, and in that succession planning, we have the, oh my gosh, if they walked out the door, the wheels would come off kind of people. And again, we're not 70,000, we're 4, or probably 42 now. So what I did in IT and what I'm looking at in my manufacturing and test organization is I've already hired their replacements, and sometimes it's, the job evolved around them over 25 years, and the way I want the job to evolve in the future is portions of it will be done by 3 different people, right? And so, when we go through our succession planning and our, and those types of, the unicorns around the company, we're already backfilling with hires to take on a significant portion of what they do. But I will tell you, I don't have a silver bullet for knowledge management. It is so hard to really be a learning organization. I studied it when I was getting my MBA, and people set up databases and this, and I don't know, maybe it was simpler back in my Navy days, but that was the best learning organization I was in. But again, I was only in a squadron, right? I was a flyer, so the people who flew the same aircraft as me had to learn from each other, right? And life and death was on the line, and so we did. And we had mechanisms to do that. If I had a knowledge management for corporate America, I'd hang a shingle and write a book. It's very, very challenging.
Okay, I think we've covered everybody's questions. Paula, do you have any final thoughts or words of wisdom you'd like to share before we end our summit today?
No, except this is sort of my journey and my experience. I'm sure there's people on the line that are much more seasoned than I am in some of these roles, but it's fun, and I'm enjoying it, and I'm learning a lot. But no, nothing else particular.
Okay, that's fine. And on behalf of all the executives on the line, I'd like to thank you for sharing such powerful ideas and key thoughts with us today. Your involvement and dedication to our profession sets a high benchmark for others to follow. And for all of the participants on today's call, thank you for your continued membership and insightful questions for today's speaker. The meeting is now officially concluded. Paula, thank you so much again, and everyone have a great day.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.